Welcome to our Teen and Parent webinar series, where we explore one of the most important journeys families face together: understanding the teen brain, the risks of addiction, and the power of healthy communication. Adolescence is a time of rapid growth and change, physically, emotionally, and neurologically, and these changes can sometimes make it hard for parents and teens to connect. In this series, we'll break down the science of the developing brain, discuss how substance use impacts decision-making and long-term health, and provide practical tools for strengthening communication and building resilience at home. Today, we have Dr. Donald Reed from the McDowell County Hope Coalition and Mr. Cliff Atkins from Clear Story Counseling.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Donald Reed with the McDowell County Hope Coalition. Today with us we have Mr. Cliff Atkins from Clear Story Counseling, and our topic today is raising grandchildren in a new generation. We're thankful that you've taken the time to join us for this important conversation. Across McDowell County and across West Virginia, more grandparents are stepping back into the parenting role. While raising grandchildren can be a tremendous joy with purpose, it can also come with emotional, financial, social, and generational challenges that many families never expected to face. Parenting today looks very different than it did 10, 20, or even 30 years ago. As we navigate technology, social media, and mental health concerns, school pressure, and changing family dynamics, grandparents can often feel overwhelmed. Today, our goal is to provide encouragement, practical guidance, with which Mr. Adkins always provides, and emotional support for grandparents and caregivers who are raising the next generation. We're honored to have Mr. Adkins with us, who will share his insight, strategy, and resources to help families build healthy relationships and stronger homes. So we'll start with the first question. What are some of the biggest emotional challenges that grandparents face when unexpectedly they had to start raising their grandchildren?
Oh, well, speaking from my experience working in the school system, and being a middle school and high school counselor, I've had a lot of conversations with grandparents who've had to step into this role. And and from what I've experienced, there seems to be they love their grandkids. And so there's that joy that they get to be around their grandchildren more. But there's also there's a little bit of fear, a little bit of or a lot of nerves that they have to step back into that parenting role, because once they've raised their children, there's almost a sense of like, ah, we've got the kids out the door. Now we get to live out the rest of our lives. Um, and and when they have grandchildren, a lot of times the expectation is that I get to spoil them, or I get to just kind of give them all the sugary foods and the loud toys and give them back to mom and dad, and kind of just be uh, to spoil them. And and then they have to step back into that role where they have to then all of a sudden learn everything that's going on with their kids' lives, and all the changing technology and everything that is rapidly changing all around their grandkids. And they step back into that parenting role, and it can be an emotional roller coaster. Yeah.
Sorry, I was on mute. How do grandparents balance being those loving caregivers while also setting healthy boundaries and discipline?
Yeah, I would kids love boundaries. They love boundaries. And obviously they're going to push back against them, but when children know what's expected of them and what's not, it does make them feel safe in the long run. Even though they may push against it initially, children love to know that there are guardrails, that the adults watching them and taking care of them care about their well-being. And I would say that for grandparents to keep the line of communication open with their grandkids. There's been somewhat of a change in, I know, back in the day, so to speak, it was this is the rule because I said so, that settles it. And while I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with that, I'm really not. Um, I would offer another path of saying, this is the rule. I said so, and here's why I'm saying it. To take that extra step that I don't know was commonplace back in the day, and explain it to the grandkid and talk to them. And again, you are the parent now. You're in that parent role, and so it's okay to switch, even though I know the expectation and what you wanted was to be the grandparent and kind of, again, spoil them and send them back to mom and dad. Once you step back into that parenting role, it's okay to sit the kid down and explain that to them. And maybe even, and again, being honest with them, but in a kind way, and explaining to them how much you love them, and that maybe you wish you could just let them do whatever they wanted, and that would be your heart's desire. Like, and let them know even when you struggle, like laying down a boundary, let them know that this boundary is hard, that this boundary is tough, and that you understand why they don't understand it, but you're holding this because you want to keep them safe, or you're showing them love. I think keeping that line of communication, and that can, again, that's a new kind of style of communicating with children.
You said two things that caught my attention about boundaries, and I'll use a different term, structure.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, grandchildren who now their grandparents are raising them come from a more unstructured environment.
Right.
So while there's some pushback, at the same time, those boundaries or that structure gives these children a security of knowing what and what not to expect, which they probably didn't have in their previous living situation.
Yeah,
Uh,
exactly.
and the other thing you mentioned about taking that, many of us were raised in the generation of because I said so. And
Yes.
um, and even as a parent, um, my therapist has challenged me to with my own kids to give that explanation as of why, especially as they're maturing and grow older, so that they understand why the rule or boundaries exist. And while many of our grandparents were raised in that generation not to question or not to talk back, the reality is that sometimes we get less resistance from children, grandchildren, if we simply take the step to explain why. So,
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
so when you said that, I thought, yeah, I realize that's true.
Yeah,
What,
absolutely.
what are some effective ways that grandparents can connect with their grandchildren using technology? Oftentimes we want to shun technology or say take it away. That's not always the answer. So on the flip side of that, how do we bond or relate as a grandparent using technology?
Yeah. I love this question because I think it's a lot of grandparents are missing this opportunity because I completely understand. It's wild. A lot of times grandparents don't understand that even those of us that are in our 40s, we the culture changes so fast and technology changes so fast that even those of us in our 40s understand the pace of how quickly things are changing, and how the second we get used to one thing, there's something new. And that can be extremely exhausting, especially if you've lived 50, 60, 70 years doing something one way and you're fine and you didn't need that. You didn't need Chat GPT, you didn't need Google, you didn't need you would go down to a restaurant or McDonald's or Wendy's and sit and talk to your buddies. Like you didn't need social media. Nobody cared what anybody, all the vacations and trips. So I understand that all of these technology changes can be exhausting. However, if you can reframe it of this is a vehicle or this is a opportunity for me to connect with my grandchild. It's not about learning technology, it's about connecting with your grandchild. And so allow them those moments to be the teacher for you. They love that. Kids love to explain and show you, oh, this is how this works. This is how this works. And then ask questions. It's not about learning Instagram. It's not about learning TikTok. It's not about learning Chat GPT. It's about connecting with your grandchild. And while doing that, you are learning what to check because I'm telling you, as a middle school and high school counselor, it will be technology that kids will play their grandparents because grandparents are like, I don't know that stuff. I don't want to fool with that stuff. Okay, because your kids though, your grandchildren do know that stuff, and they will lie to you. They'll tell you all sorts of stories. Oh, you can't do that. That's not possible to do. And so, if you really want to know what's going on, you, you need to learn. You have to figure that stuff out.
Yeah, I have a younger friend that's 25 years my junior, and one of the ways we connect is we watch the silly reels together on
Yeah,
Instagram.
absolutely.
That's a source of conversation um, between generations.
Absolutely.
So, how do grandparents help grandchildren? This is maybe a more weightier question. How do grandparents help their grandchildren who may be dealing with trauma or grief or that family instability?
By acknowledging it, validating it, and then providing that security and safety. So you're validating the feelings that the kid may have. I understand that you may be scared. I understand that you may be nervous. I understand that your father or mother may have hurt you. But I'm with you in this because it's their child. It's their child. It's the kid's parents, but it's also their child. So they're feeling pain as well. They're feeling they may not have experienced direct trauma per se, but they're feeling that. And so to validate that and to provide a space for their grandkids to talk about it, even though it may hurt. You may not want to think because, obviously we take the way our kids behave very personally. And, and so when we raise a child who has a child and they are hurtful or harmful to that child, that can feel very personal. You can start to say, well, what did I do? Did I do something that raised this kind of person that would hurt or harm their child or put their child? And so if that grandchild may want to talk about it, we're like, we don't want to hear it. I don't want to talk about it because it's just too much. It's too heavy. Because it bothers us that we raised someone who has chosen to do that when rather than to avoid it, lean into it with your grandchild. Again, you're in this with them because this situation is happening to both of you. It's happening to both of you. Uh, it's not just happening to the grandchild. You thought you were going to be a grandparent that was going to spoil them and live out the rest of your day. So this is happening to you. So to validate their feelings, but to also give them safety to talk about it will be will be huge for that child to be able to talk about it. And the other thing too is to talk about your stories with your grandchild. Talk to them about some of the things that you've gone through. I've been amazed as an adult at the stories that I've heard older adults talk about when they were growing up, trauma and stories and experiences that they lived through that they have held in forever, decades, and not told anyone. And and there's so many stories that I'm sure the grandparents can connect with the grand if they would just open up. and share.
As you were talking, it made me realize that probably, and only because of um, the maturity level, grandchildren probably don't fully understand that the transition their grandparents are making in
Oh,
raising.
absolutely.
And I had one grandmother tell me one time, she says, I was looking forward to retirement, and I feel like my golden years, my retirement has been taken away.
Mm,
They loved their grandchildren, but
right.
but their life is completely different now. And she's like, if I can live to be 80, they'll be 18. That's a lot of stress to put on a senior citizen, if you will. Uh,
Yeah.
it's a good segment, and I'll mention this again at the end. There are three different support groups for grandparents in McDowell County. If you're in the Norfolk, Kimball, Keystone area, Children's Home Society through Becky Brown has a grandparents group. If you're here in the Welch area, Robin Pruitt runs a support group at the Welch Senior Center. And if you're in the War Bradshaw area, Tammy Fleshman and Annetta Tiller run one at the refuge. So when we think of just McDowell County, those are three very strong groups. And then I wouldn't want to forget the Board of Education has their Family Advisory Council that meets once a month, which is many grandparents. So we have these four different groups all working to support grandfamilies in this community. But let's go back to the grandparents who often feel overwhelmed, exhausted, and maybe guilty of having to start over as caregivers. What do you say to an exhausted or overwhelmed grandparent?
I would say lean into the resources that are available and be open to possible, what am I, the new possibilities, ways that you may not have considered before. Big example, therapy. Again, it's not in our area. I understand it's not as promoted and or it's seen as like, oh, that's what young people are going to, or that's for this type of person or this group. And if anybody has had a good experience with therapy, you know the relief that it provides and the outlet that it gives. And for grandparents going through this, like you said, it's a heavy weight. Parenting alone is a heavy weight. And to go through a second round of it in the years that you weren't even planning on it, you're in a whole different landscape than before. Um, and you're further away from the person you're raising in years and in culture. And so to go to therapy, to go to groups, again, that was not a big thing 40 years ago, 30 years ago. But those resources exist now. And um, I heard a therapist once say, because people will say, "Oh, I can't afford that," or "That takes too much time," and he said, "Can you afford not to do it?" The cost to not do it could be far greater than the cost of doing it. And it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to say, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know, because there are people out there that can help you with that. And that's what their whole role in life is. Like that's their whole role, is to be a resource, to say, talk to me. Tell me what you're confused about. Tell me what you're not understanding, and let me help you with that so that you can know. Far better to do that than to suffer in isolation.
Yeah, you made me think. We also live in a culture where you don't discuss your family problems outside the home. That's very much a coal camp Appalachian mentality. If I can use the phrase, you keep your dirty laundry at home.
Hmm.
Well, the truth is when you do that, you don't reach out for help and you don't reach out for the resources that you need. For grandparents who are listening, we have a social worker at the Commission on Aging that's just dedicated to helping grandfamilies.
That's
So
great.
if you're listening, you can call and inquire, and someone will help. As far as therapy, just I'm well known in this community, and while you are my therapist, uh, I readily acknowledge that it completely changed my outlook on life and the mentality and weight that I walk around with every day. So take this from someone, if you're listening, that you know and recognize. Don't close the door on a therapist to help you. Um,
Mhm.
Last question. Thinking of the mental health of grandfamilies or grandparents specifically, um, besides therapy, how do you deal with stress?
I would tell them to not to lose themselves. So if they had things that they were wanting to do or get into, do that. Bring your grandchild along with you. Um, the wisdom and joy of a child being around their grandparents is so valuable. It's so grandparents have so much wisdom. They have so many funny stories and cool stories. And kids love hearing about like this used to be a store, but now it's a this, and this used to be a this, and we used to go here and we used to do that. And even the most mundane, silly stories that grandparents may think they have can be fascinating to a child. And so I think for their mental health, it's don't lose yourself in the stress of everything. Um, put your put your success in your effort and not necessarily in your outcomes. Give it all you have. But that doesn't mean, that you die to yourself per se. You still have your hobbies. You still have ways that you blow off steam. And here's the thing. A lot of times people feel selfish taking time for themselves, but it's not. You're also modeling for that grandchild that it's okay to recharge,
Hmm.
that you don't run on fumes because we all know that that leads to burnout. And and what you run the risk of when you lose yourself and you don't continually meet with your friends, you don't keep up with your friend, you don't stay healthy and stay active, whatever that means, walking, just being out and about. What ultimately will happen is you'll get burnout by the time that grandchild is a teenager. You'll be so done and over it that you'll just completely let go of the wheel altogether and you'll just and then they run. Now the grandchild is a teenager running the house because of the burnout. So the cost of not maintaining your hobbies and your relationships is very high. Like you need that personally, but your grandchild also needs you to do that as well.
Well, we'd like to thank each of you for being a part of this conversation. Raising grandchildren is not an easy journey, but one filled with love, sacrifice, strength, and hope. To all grandparents who've joined us tonight or who will watch the video, please know that your role deeply matters. The time, patience, and wisdom and stability that you provide will truly change the life of the child you have. Even on difficult days, your presence will make a lasting impact. On behalf of the McDowell County Hope Coalition, have a good day and join us next time.